Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. Here's your flash briefing for the week of November 13th. City Council will meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. If you can't watch, quickly catch up on City Council meetings by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityfls.net. Head to Howard Station Park on November 17th as we light downtown in thousands of sparkling lights for the mayor's tree lighting at 6:30 p.m. This year's theme is A Toy Story, and the evening will be filled with surprises as the beloved toys come to life on stage. Enjoy shopping, live window displays, musical performances, a visit from Santa and Mrs. Claus, and much more to get you into the holiday spirit. Curious to know more about the inner workings of the city? Here's your chance. The Citizens Leadership Academy is accepting applications. This interactive program is designed to give attendees a behind-the-scenes look at the inner workings of city government, with facility tours and presentations from city leaders and elected officials. Sessions begin in January and conclude in April. Learn more at cityfls.net. You can pay your Jackson County property, business, and real estate taxes at Treasury in the lobby of City Hall. Payments received at Treasury can be in the form of cash, check, or card. If you pay at City Hall, Lee Summit benefits by receiving 1% of all tax dollars collected. Treasury is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, with extended hours of 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. December 27th through the 29th.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out, letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're gonna go out and follow our sign guys, get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T is back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. These come up too. Perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple, quick.
Member Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Quite a few of us are getting questions. I know I've gotten a few questions about the plan, so I didn't know if, just for the public knowledge. I'm not a politician. I feel like I'm just an average person in Lee Summit. They have a football field set up. Inside these cones are their football fields. Our two-car garage is we're gonna bring the driveway back through here, and it's gonna go right here. And then, so my family has chickens. When we first got chickens, my husband said, don't treat them as your pets, treat them as chickens, because we're going to be eating the eggs, and I would like to use them for meat. So don't treat them as your pets. Well, we now have 6 chickens that I consider my pets, and I will not let him kill for meat. So we live downtown, and we love living downtown. These are my children. The first one's Lincoln, and Amira, and Sophia, and Caleb. This is a great neighborhood. Downtown is one big community, and all of the kids get together and they play basketball, and we like to walk to the farmer's market. Here, hold my hand. It's an easy walk, probably less than 10 minutes. The farmer's market has always been a very important part of my life and my family's life. As a matter of fact, when my daughter started kindergarten, I dropped her off and I was going shopping at the farmer's market right behind Lee Summit Elementary. And I was teary-eyed because she was my first and she was going off to kindergarten. And Terry, the butterfly lady, the one that's in the purple shirt, and she used to make little butterfly stickers for everyone, she gave me a big hug and was just so empathetic to the fact that my daughter had just started school. How are you guys doing? Doing well, how are you? Yeah, very good. A lot of the farmers there, they've watched my kids grow up. I love Lee Summit in general. I love that it still has a small town feel while embracing growth and the arts and diversity. And I feel like downtown specifically embodies that. My kids go to Lee Summit Elementary, and a lot of their teachers live downtown, and a lot of the business owners from downtown live downtown. So when we're out walking downtown, we see so many people we know. I lived in Africa until I was 5, and then we moved to the United States, and I've lived in Lee Summit since. Oh, a lot of my childhood, my mom was a single mom, and I feel like I was essentially raised by my community and being on council, and it's just such an important way to give back to the community that raised me.
I state your name.
I, Mia Pryor,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications
this day of April 2022. The election process was fun. I got to go door to door and talk to people, which is my absolute favorite thing to do, is talking to people and learning about people. I even had people inviting me into their house for dinner or inviting me back to their house to meet their spouse. And I knocked on a door, and the lady that answered the door was my kindergarten teacher. So it was a lot of fun. Is it on? Hi everyone, I'm Councilmember Mia Pryor. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I have one on, can you not? Okay. Maybe I went. I love being a council rep for District 1. I know everyone says this, but District 1 is by far, in my opinion, the best district. Raintree Lake, that's part of District 1. I love that community. Actually, my husband and I got married at the clubhouse in Raintree Lake. I really love all of South Lee Summit. I love the growth that they're going to be experiencing soon and that they've already experienced. I wanted to say that if you guys have a concern, please come tell us what your concern is, because we can only address and help with what we know. We're there to kind of bridge that gap between constituents in the city, and we're the voice of our constituents, and we can go to the city and voice what their concerns are, what their ideas are. So if you have a concern, definitely make us aware. So my big priorities are public safety. That's always one of my top priorities. I've always wanted to make sure that first responders were supported. I think that that's super important to me, and to many in our city. But also, I wanted to influence the growth in Lee Summit. I wanted to influence the type of businesses we get here and the type of activities there are to do for our families. If we're going to continue to grow downtown, how important it is to focus on people that already live here and the infrastructure we already have in place.
Our first presentation tonight is going to be Assistant City Manager Ryan Elam, who is going to talk about that very exciting Farmers Market Plaza.
But I want to show you the most recent rendering, fly-through video of that. That's really the best way to kind of get a good sense of what this will look like in the near future.
To see it developing into something as big as it's going to be across from City Hall is super exciting to me. I can't wait for it to get built and to start welcoming people into what the farmers market's going to be, but also everything else that goes along with that development.
Okay.
Dad, you want to hold it? Don't drop it.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a good rest.
I'm just an average person in Lee Summit that wanted to be a voice of many that sometimes feel like they don't have a voice. Yeah, I'm not a politician. I'm just a mom that cares.
Welcome, everyone. Would you please rise for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Father, bless those that have come together tonight for good dialogue regarding our community and making it a better place to live and raise our children. Help us serve the constituency that depend on us for meaningful decisions. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us speak with charity and moderation, and give us the spirit of service. Guide us to be leaders that our citizens expect. Amen.
Okay, I'm calling to order the City of Lee Summit regular session, number 55. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember DeMauro.
Here.
Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Felker. Councilmember Lovell.
Here.
Councilmember Edson.
Here.
Councilmember Shields.
Here.
Councilmember Hodges.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Baird.
Here. Before we do the approval of the agenda, I need to do a little bit of agenda management. I need to pull out of the consent agenda. I'm trying to see which one it is here. Yes, number would be agenda item 2H. It'd be the Longview, the NLV Farm Office. Just people had some questions, and it's best to pull it out of the consent agenda if we're going to discuss one certain item. So I would like to put that, Ms. Arcuri Fowler, our city clerk, could you put that right after the proclamations? Okay. All right. So I've got a motion to adopt the agenda as I just amended it by Councilmember DeMauro, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Discussion? All right, seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It does pass 8-0. Thank you. Next is the approval of the consent agenda, less that one item. I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 8-0. Thank you. Takes us to Council Roundtable. There is something going on Friday. And I was wondering, we've got some special guests in the audience, so I'm hoping that, you know, they're all going to be there dressed in their best Toy Story outfits and costumes, because we have a Toy Story in downtown Lee Summit for the mayor's tree lighting. And we are going to have music, and there's going to be a spirit of community, and there's going to be some ornaments if you get there early enough, and there's going to be Santa Claus, and there's going to be Sarge, you know, Sarge, the little army guy in the movie. But we need a Woody and a Buzz. We need Rex. Do you got a Rex outfit? Body? Just the body. Really? We need to talk before you leave. All right. But it's the downtown mayor tree lighting, 6:30 on Friday. Very excited and looking forward to it. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. I just wanted to, for one, tell everyone that downtown Lee Summit, if you haven't been shopping there lately, they have a lot of new fun stores. I think one of them is going to open up this Friday. Liminality, I think is the name of it. So it opens this Friday. Then there's another one, I think it's True Casey. It opened a couple weeks ago. But there's a lot of fun new stores in addition to all the other fun stores that were already there. And yeah, so if you're going to holiday shop soon, then go to downtown Lee Summit.
Very good.
That's it.
Thank
Thanks.
you. There was a big groundbreaking today as well. It was Discovery Park, and $1 billion development in a very underutilized area of our community, Colburn Road area. And we're also building out Colburn Road, major expansion there. Looking forward to a couple of hotels going in there. So it was a really nice grand opening, or excuse me, groundbreaking, and excited to see that move forward. They've been moving a lot of dirt out there. Okay, well then let's do this proclamation. Would you all like to meet me down front, please? Yeah, come this way and face out front. And I'll stand in the middle. Come on each side if you don't mind. I'll read and then we'll go around and tell us about what's going on. So, whereas the theater programs of the high schools of Lee Summit last year provided over 600 students the chance to participate in more than 30 productions, ranging from major musicals to small one-act plays. Whereas research has demonstrated that student performance on academic tests, positive behavior in school, graduation rates, and engagement in the community citizenship activities are all better among students in theater programs when compared to the general student population. Whereas the theater programs have a significant impact on the community of Lee Summit, as over 15,000 people attend school theater productions in the city each year, and thousands of dollars are spent at local businesses to purchase products and supplies needed to mount these production, and at local restaurants for before and after show meals. Whereas the theater programs have gained attention throughout the metropolitan area and the state for their excellent work, including more best overall production awards from both the Blue Star and Cappy's program than any other school system in the Kansas City area, and providing numerous student and adult board leaders for regional and state educational theater organizations over the years. And whereas the high school programs have provided significant community service programs in recent years, including the annual Trick or Treat So Kids Can Eat food drives that have raised over 70,000 pounds of food over the past 13 years for families in need in Lee Summit. Whereas Summit Christian Academy, Lee Summit High School, Lee Summit North High School, Lee Summit West High School, and St. Michael the Archangel Catholic High School will all present major productions this fall. By virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lee Summit, I hereby proclaim November 2023 as Educational Theater Month. Can I get a round of applause? Thank you. Wow, you guys look wonderful, and I am so glad that you're here. Oh, I was going to come over to you and have you say a few words. Oh, you want to take a picture? You want to take a picture first? I'm going to take a picture after. I will let you start us off and tell us.
We have students here from the three Lee Summit School District high schools, and so they are all here representing their shows. The two groups on the end have shows that continue this Friday night, so unfortunately, no Woody or Buzz in that group. But maybe the group that's right here who just closed their production, and this is their director, Mr. William Palmer.
Hello, yes, we're with Lee Summit North High School, and we just closed our production of the musical Zombie Prom, so unfortunately, we were past being able to see it, but it was an amazing production and a great turnout.
And then we can let the students introduce themselves and just tell you who they played in that show.
Hi, I'm Ryder Brewster. I played Johnny, the zombie.
I'm Daniela Segura Conde, and I play Toffee, the girl who falls in love with the zombie.
I'm Kinsley Ward, and I play Miss Delilah Strict, the principal.
I'm Jake Johnson. I play Eddie Flagranti, the reporter.
I'm Kate Marshall. I play Regina George in Mean Girls the Musical, and we are continuing this weekend.
I'm Max Hunt. I play Mr. Duvall in the musical, and yeah.
I'm McKenna Laird, and I'm the stage manager for the musical.
I'm Sydney Laird, and I play Katie Heron in Mean Girls.
I'm Benjamin Bruner. I play Damian Hubbard in Mean Girls.
I'm Henry Wood, and I play Prez in The Pajama Game.
I'm Alara Alderson, and I play Gladys in The Pajama Game, and we are also still going this weekend, so.
Awesome, I love it. I would like to take a photo with you all if you would scooch in a little bit. On our social media. Thank you all again. Thanks for coming tonight. Good luck in your performances, and thank you for your participation and helping Lee Summit in wonderful ways. And then, let's see here.
Thank you.
Before we continue, were any of you in theater? Any of you in theater? Hillary Shields. You were what? A giant nerd. Hillary Shields. Okay. And, okay, very good. Well, you're still young. You can. There are 3 theater groups in town. Talk to Ben about getting you involved. You can become that star. Okay, so I said I would put the agenda item H on the agenda right after the proclamation. So this is an ordinance approving the assignment agreement of NLV Farm Office, LLC, Brittany Harrington, in the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, for the property designated as Redevelopment Project M, containing the farm office and the dairy manager house as historic preservation improvements pursuant to the new Longview tax increment financing plan. I will need somebody to make a motion, because this is a second reading. Could I have someone make a motion so we can have a discussion? Councilmember Shields, would you make a motion?
Yeah, I move to adopt Bill number 23-214, an ordinance approving the assignment agreement among NLV Farm Office LLC, Brittany Harrington, and the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, for the property designated as Redevelopment Project M, containing the farm office and dairy manager house as historic preservation improvements pursuant to the new Longview tax increment financing plan.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-214 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Mr. Bushek, would you want to, I know that you mentioned you're ready to field some questions. Do you want to make any statements, or do you want us to just ask questions?
David Bushek, Chief Counsel of Economic Development and Planning. I'm prepared to talk about whatever you'd like, so I suppose we could start with the questions and we could go from there.
Do that. I've got a motion on the floor in a second. Discussion. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. David, I've got a few questions, and I'll start with the TIF funds, if you can. I noticed on the TIF schedules that there are 2 TIFs associated with Longview, and I'm not sure which or both are what. Could you help me with that? There's a Longview Farm TIF and then a Longview Farm 2016 TIF.
Right. So I brought some visuals here to help walk through the history. There's an extensive history for this project, so I'll just hit some of the high points, and then you can tell me if I'm covering what you're thinking of. So the first map that I brought with me, this is the map of the 2003 TIF plan that was approved by the City Council. The red boundary are the full redevelopment area of the original TIF plan, about 107 acres. The blue areas are the projects that have been activated. And so this is one project up here, this is a project, this is the McDonald's project, and this is the mansion down here. And then this next map is basically the same area. This visual that you're looking at was the original concept plan prepared by the original developer that advanced the first TIF plan from 2003. And so the shapes, kind of the shading you see in here, this was that developer's original layout of the land uses as far as single family, multifamily, commercial, and so forth. This has changed substantially. The road network has changed substantially. But one thing that this may help you understand a bit better is the 4 activated TIF projects from the original TIF plan and all of the unactivated TIF projects. Those were not activated because There's a restriction in the TIF Act that provides that each project area has to be activated within 10 years after the plan is approved. And so only these 4 that are highlighted were approved during that first 10-year window. And so then we moved on to the second TIF plan, and this was the plan that was approved in 2015. And if you can kind of think of this like a jigsaw puzzle, I suppose, the first TIF plan was this entire redevelopment area, and then the second TIF plan in 2015, the red areas, which is the redevelopment area, were all of the undeveloped parcels as of that time in 2015. And so if you take the original TIF plan and the 2015 TIF plan and layer those together, they both cover all of the property that has been developing over a period of years. And then this map shows the numerous projects that were approved in the 2015 TIF plan and covering all of the undeveloped areas. The redevelopment projects are the area where we, and the council has, from time to time, activated TIF collection. And so this isn't in the TIF plan, or TIF Act, excuse me, but my way of thinking it is the projects are the generators. So where we activate the TIF projects, those generate the TIF revenues that we've talked about, the pilots and the EATs, the property tax, and the sales tax increment. And then the receivers of the TIF revenues are the historic preservation improvements, and they're scattered throughout this area. You've got the mansion down here, you've got potentially the 2 barns here, you've got the 2 houses that we're talking about tonight, you've got the show horse arena, which is up in this area, you've got the arches. So all of the historic preservation improvements that are throughout this area are according to a schedule that I'll show you in a moment, those are the historic preservation improvements that receive reimbursement of TIF revenues. I brought this is the 2015 TIF plan. I might go into a little more detail depending on where your questions go, but the original goal of the 2003 TIF plan and the 2015 TIF plan was historic preservation, with the idea being that if the city expends money on the historic preservation improvements, they remain part of the overall area that encourages development of this area in a mixed-use, unique neighborhood community that includes residential and commercial development, including shops, restaurants, offices, and similar uses. This is where I'm reading from parts of the plan. It was recognized in 2003 that but for the assistance of tax increment financing, the stabilization and ultimate rehabilitation of any of the historic structures would not reasonably be expected to occur. So when we talk about tax increment financing and the but-for test, the idea is we've had the original developer and over time succession of developers essentially saying to the city, this historic preservation would not occur without the use of the TIF revenues to reimburse developers, to encourage them to invest private monies into these properties and then receive reimbursement from TIF revenues. So those are kind of the visuals of the 2 TIF plans. And then the final page that I brought, this is the schedule of reimbursement. The items on the top part of this chart are reimbursable and actually have been reimbursed from the 2003 TIF plan. And then the bottom part of the schedule, what's called the Phase 2 historic preservation improvements, those are the items that are being reimbursed from the 2015 TIF plan. The city issued a loan to, at the time, Mariner, the developer in 2015, in the amount of this $3.65 million. And then that loan to the developer that the city made has been repaid over time with the TIF revenues. And we're projecting that this loan will be fully paid off likely sometime late next year. It may go into the next calendar year, but if sales revenues continue as they have been historically over the last 5 years or so, the amount of this loan will be fully paid off next year, and then we'll only be reimbursing for these items according to this schedule going forward in time. That's kind of a summary of how the 2 plans work and a snapshot of the visuals and the budget.
So if I may, then the 2015 TIF, 1.2 million, if I'm reading this correct. Total project was 1.7 and 1.2 has been reimbursed.
So the reimbursement column is this on the far right. And if you go down this list, these have been reimbursed to the developer. Well, I'll say the developer, although there's multiple parties behind the developer that have received reimbursement. These amounts have been reimbursed through this loan, and then the city's loan is being repaid from the TIF revenues. And then for the 2015 TIF plan, the Longview Lake and Pergola rehabilitation have been certified for reimbursement. The mansion in the amount of 1.4 million has been certified for reimbursement. Then third in priority, the Lake and Pergola again, 750,000. And now we're down to the next item, which is before you tonight, which is the farm office and dairy manager's house, which is eligible to receive up to 1.2 million in reimbursement if there's in fact sufficient qualifying costs for those two structures.
And then if there's not sufficient cost, then it just rolls back in as it just, the balance goes to something else, right?
That's right. So as these items have been certified for reimbursement, they're sitting there, they're accruing interest until they're reimbursed by the city from available TIF revenues on an annual basis, and in the case of each, the sales taxes on a regular basis throughout the year. And once each of these items are paid off, then the next item becomes available for reimbursement. And then to answer your question, let's say there's a scenario where this historic preservation improvement doesn't happen, then the next item would become eligible. And if this does happen, then there would need to be the certification process for potentially up to 1.2 million. That would be reimbursed in sequence, and then we'd keep going down the list, presuming that those historic preservation improvements are rehabilitated and the reimbursement is certified over a period of time.
And then in the TIF contract, it talks about that there are pilots of the activated districts. So are we receiving pilots on any, on the farm office and dairy manager? Or is there?
No, we're not. So one of the next steps, I'm going to go back to one of my maps here. So the two structures that the assignment is before you tonight on are in what's called Project M. This has not been activated by the City Council yet, so we're not collecting any revenues from that area. As a point of comparison, 2 council meetings back, you approved Project I here where the townhomes are being constructed. So next year, the city will start collecting pilots, TIF revenue in the form of pilots, from the incremental increase in the value of this property, which will go into the bucket for reimbursement. So the City Council would still need to act to approve Project M if you approve the assignment tonight.
Okay, so that would happen simultaneously?
Yes, not simultaneously. That ordinance is not before you tonight.
No, but I mean, yeah, it would be shortly.
Right, well, possibly. So one of the next questions we would have for the buyer of the property is, when does she plan to actually start making improvements? And what we'll really focus on is what will happen by January 1st of next year, presumably nothing, given where we're at, and it's the middle of November. So it could be that we wait until next calendar year to activate that project, under the assumption that the value of that property will increase starting January 1st of 2025, and we'll actually start generating pilots. So we'll maximize our TIF collection by waiting one more calendar year to activate that project. So it might be January before we activate that project.
Let me think here. I thought I had another question. All right, so January 25. So there are no, since there are no pilots, there's language in here about that they have to be assessed and paid by December 31st. However, this not been activated. So,
correct.
But we are collecting pilots on other things.
On other properties, right.
Yeah. And one thing I want to clarify, or want clarification, that the rehab, the improvements will ultimately lead to a private residence. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. That's what their intention is.
Okay. All right, so 1.2 million. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stop there. I don't know if, well, nobody does have any other questions, but I will stop and yield.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Shields.
So I guess I had some of the same kind of questions. I'm glad that Councilmember DeMoro brought this up for us to talk about. So I understood from our last meeting that the idea behind this was that historic preservation was an important goal, and so we were willing to put some tax TIF money into that, even though it's going to be a private residence.
Yes, that's.
Are they required to do, I know they have the historic preservation easement that they'll grant, but is this going to be open to the public at all? Do they do tours? Like what, does the public just get to see it from the road? Like,
So, from the perspective of the TIF plan and the TIF contract, what the city receives, receives, what the public receives, the benefit to the public from expending TIF revenues on these historic preservation improvements is historically preserved buildings that we're protecting the view shed through the historic preservation easement. So they continue to exist and maintain their cultural value, however you'd like to characterize the cultural value from historic buildings that have been preserved for the benefit of the community. And some buildings may be open to the public, some may not. Each of these structures has its own unique characteristics. So the Show Horse Arena, for example, that's been incorporated into the school. The public can see that structure. Not everybody can go in and just look at it. They need to, go through the entrance of the school, and then you need to follow the school's protocols. So there's limitations there. The arches, those can be viewed by the public, but there's nothing to go into. The barns, which I suppose hopefully will be reused for something, could be any number of different types of uses, may be open to the public, may become commercial structures, maybe like a living history farm, have limited openings for the public, so remains to be seen what happens there. And for the two structures that we're talking about tonight, the TIF plan doesn't specify anything in particular regarding what those uses would be. From my memory, the most discussion that we had at the time the 2015 TIF plan was approved is that the then developer might either redevelop the property or sell to another developer and incorporate those structures into the residential development that happens in the area, potentially becoming part of the clubhouse type feature. That's about the only thing that I really remember. But there was nothing specific about what those land uses could or could not be. The intention of the TIF plan is to use the TIF revenue to restore the structures, and then the city receives the historic preservation easement, which means the exterior cannot be blocked and cannot be changed without city approval going forward in time.
I guess my inclination is to, prior council approved this, and I don't want to, I'm not going to vote no on it, but I do definitely have, questions about this or this kind of thing going forward. Like, there's more than one council member on this dais that lives in a historic home, but we don't expect tax incentives to keep our homes updated and cracks in my foundation, like it's part of the cost of living in a historic home. So, but I understand this was a unified view for the development of this area to keep its character and to, I understand that, but I'm glad that we had the discussion, and I don't know that if something like this came before us now, if I would support it, but I appreciate that was the vision that the prior council had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hodges?
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding clearly. So they could rehab this, turn around, sell it, and make profit off of our incentive? That's
Yes, that's a possibility. So the way to think about this, and this is the point where I'll answer your question. I'm not advocating one position or the other. I'm basically explaining how the TIF plan works. And like Councilmember Shield just said, it's a previous composition of the city council that essentially made this judgment. The notion behind this TIF plan is that these buildings would not be preserved and they would probably be demolished without the use of TIF revenues. And so the city council made the decision to authorize the use of TIF revenues to preserve these buildings to maintain their historical and cultural significance. And the premise, the sort of economic premise behind that is because the private sector won't sink sufficient funds into that historic preservation component to cause it to happen, the city council, in effect, wrestling with the exact same issue that you're wrestling with, said, we're willing to do that. We're willing to use public TIF revenues to reimburse private parties to induce them to invest in this property so we preserve the historic character of those structures. And it's a known quantity that goes with that, like I said, the benefit of the bargain for the city is preserved historic buildings. Yes, they'll probably be in private ownership. Yes, private companies can profit from that. But the exchange for providing the TIF revenues is to induce companies to undertake the risk, whether it's through equity or private loans with a bank, to invest in that property and undertake what is probably higher, more significant risk than in other types of development, to preserve these structures with private funds because they know they'll receive reimbursement. And so the payoff for the private sector is, yes, they could sell that at a profit or make money from rentals or selling goods and services or whatever the case may be. And I understand the issue you're wrestling with. This is not the first time the city council and individual council members have wrestled with this issue.
I mean, I understand that 2015 council made a decision, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
One other thing that I'll mention is, under the TIF contract, the current owner of the property, which is an entity, NLV Farm Office LLC, which is controlled by Sunflower, everything that I just described to you is a right that that company already has today. So if that entity, essentially Sunflower, wanted to do what I just described, invest private money in this and receive reimbursement and put those into productive use, whether it's a residence or a business or whatever the case may be, that right already exists today. And the question that's before the council tonight is simply, are you comfortable enough with the other party that's in front of you to assign that right to reimbursement to that party?
All right, thank you for explaining that.
Thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely don't want to see a big piece of history torn down, but with this, if we open up this door and this gets approved tonight, what keeps future historic homeowners or prospective homeowners from trying to come before us and doing this? And
I guess the simple answer is nothing prevents them from asking you, but before that would ever happen, a TIF plan like this would have to come through the city council and you'd have to approve it. So the city council, at the time the plan is presented, you'd go through the exact issues that you're wrestling with right now. And I'll say this, I can't think of any other TIF plans, and I've worked on many in other cities. Most TIF plans are like the traditional TIF plans that we have in other parts of the city, like Streets of West Pryor, Summit Fair, Summit Woods, and so forth. And in all the other cities I've worked on these type of projects with, this is a one of a kind. City council's approval of this TIF plan for this unique area, given its historic significance to the area and to Lee Summit, is a one of a kind. And so if another TIF plan were proposed, like what you're contemplating, what's to prevent somebody else in the downtown area, whatever, is there anything else in the city that rises to the historic significance that this area does? Maybe, and that time might come, but this is a very unique area.
so I guess where I'm at is, I'm sure at one point, people looked at TIFs on apartments and thought, oh, this is a unique circumstance, and now we're inundated with every multifamily that comes before us, they're asking for an incentive. So I just don't want to see us open this door and go down that road where we're using people's, we're using incentives to fund private residents. So that's where I'm contemplating. I definitely don't want to see it torn down though, and if that's the alternative, then yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lovell.
Thanks, Mayor. Just trying to remember back to 2015, because I do remember as a neighborhood. I think, one of the things just thinking through this is like, number one, is there a historic designation on those that prevents us from actually doing any harm to those, right? Because we did put some money to stabilize them.
So there's nothing that the city has
I don't
done
know if maybe the
on its own
applicant-
pursuant to this TIF plan that would either force somebody to continue the investment or prevent the demolition, but I'm not sure if there's other designations on these properties or not. And Mr. Moberly could probably answer that if he'd like.
And I remember this 8 years ago, like being here as part of New Longview.
Better memory than I do. Mark Moberly, Sunflower Development Group, 1125 Grand Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri. So a couple things. There is not a formal historic designation on the two homes or the two barns. They are part of the National Historic District. The proposed buyer, Brittany, does intend to apply for historic tax credits, which would put them on the National Register. That's an extra step if they ever did want to get torn down. I do think it's important also to point out, I'm not answering your direct question, it's not just a private residence. There's 2 homes, and she intends to use one for a B&B, a bed and breakfast. So as the mansion is private, you can't just walk in because we own it and operate it as an event space. You do have the ability to access the mansion from a private use. Same concept with the B&B. We didn't really touch on that during the first reading, and I think that's important because while the private residence makes sense for her, she doesn't need 2 homes, and so a B&B is one of them. And it is important, what Mr. Bushak said, we could do this now. The question is, why aren't I doing it? If we were said in 2015, we'll be happy to buy these from Mariner. Part of it is, and if you'd be so kind as to go back to the schedule of improvements, this doesn't all happen at once. The 400,000, the 1.4, the 750, the 1.2, it's only available as revenues are generated. And so when we thought this would be possible in 2015, we were excited at the possibility of what might be in the commercial area. And there's been some great commercial development. It's been a little slower than we thought. We thought we'd see 5 fast food restaurants and 3 movie theaters and a grocery store and all this great pilots and all these great eats. And we'd have the funds to do all of this, the TIF funds to do all of this private investment. And quite frankly, it just hasn't been there yet. And I don't know if I'm stepping on your toes, stop me. But the 400,000 has been reimbursed. The 1.4 is still being reimbursed. The buyer, or me, whoever decides to spend reimbursable cost, would have to wait 3 to 4 years before they get a dime of that 1.2 million. Because next in line is the 750,000 that's been spent on the lake and the pergola. And so when you talk about risk, we've said to the council, and the council's approved, that there could be 1.7 million spent on these homes. They're tiny, there's holes in the floors, they should fall down. Thank you to the city council for giving us the 150,000 to allow these to stabilize and be here still today. The third home did get torn down, if you remember. There was one that was just too far gone to save, and so we did lose a piece of the new Longview history. But because we were able to stabilize, and if you go in them today, you can see the work that our contractor did to get them to the point where we can save them today. And we is going to be Brittany, thankfully. She's got a vision that's better than we can do and funds that and use that we don't have as our company, just with our business model. But she's taking a huge risk because she's going to spend all this money that says, hey, part of that should be supported with public funds, per the council and per the new Longview district. She's going to have to wait 4 years for it. Now, if something happens out there and there's more revenues, that's great. We're supportive of everything. But what I would also say, because we've talked about the barns, it's so hard for us to consider a barns redevelopment because the TIF money that's needed to make that financially feasible is so far away in the future, I can't actually consider something today. We want to, we love them. I can't tell you how many tours I do of those barns. We've got them listed with a very reputable broker who's brought us a lot of great ideas. I'm so thankful that he brought us Brittany because she has a vision and she can execute on that with something that we're just not prepared to do today. So there's just so many moving parts, and gosh, it was 2013 when we started this, so it's been 10 years since all this was really litigated in this room. But we've been proud of what we've done today, just our small part and what the rest of the Longview district has done with the lake and the pergola and the arches, and what we've done with the mansion and what we hope to do with the barns one day. Sorry for 15 questions getting answered there.
Appreciate it. I think that's it for questions I have. I might have some comments when we get there, but.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Edson?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to say, Ms. Harrington, I hope you have figured out that none of this is personal and that nobody on this sitting up here today was here in 2015. So that's why there are so many questions. So I hope that has been communicated to you. David, I want to clarify, just make sure I understand something you said to Councilmember Hodges. So if we took out Ms. Harrington out of the equation and Sunflower, we were just approving those for Sunflower, they could basically do the same.
Can, nobody else is on my list to speak, so I'll just add a few things. Can maybe Mr. Moberly, if you could speak to, you've been dealing with the area for quite some time now. you can speak to what the citizens out there in the community, what they want, because I'm sure that they've wanted you to fix up these locations for years. I mean, you have done a bunch of work out there. Thank you for that. But I know that there's constant questions from you. So what's the sentiment on the west side of Lee Summit?
Amazing support. I mean, I get calls. Every time someone buys a home in New Longview or Kessler Ridge, they find me, and we're not hard to find. We put our name on the billboard out there and say, what's going on? We're excited. We read the history. We've got the books. There's a lot of support. I remember being in this room in 2013, 2014, and hundreds of New Longview residents, all dressed in red, came to express their support to save these historic homes, because that's why they chose to live in the New Longview area, because of the old Longview history. And there's not a lot left when you look at what was. There's very little of that history and that fabric left. And so we were asked to come in by Mariner because of our historic rehab experience and say, what would it take to save these buildings? And we put together financial analysis, and that's what you're seeing here. And we said, this is what it's going to take. But because that money is not available until there is revenue produced, you need to do something today. These things are falling down. And if you've ever been in the barns, you can see, I always say it's keeping the critters, the teenagers, and the weather out. We had all three of those in all of these structures for decades. And we still get a little bit of that. But I get calls from the neighbors. I know a lot of folks in the neighborhood that call my cell phone and say, hey, I see something in the barns. So they're very passionate about it, and they want to see something done. And I will tell you, we would love nothing more than to do a redevelopment of the barns. We have the ideas. We've got people that are kicking the tires. Our issue is how long it takes to get to that first dollar of the TIF money that makes it financially feasible. And that's the next conversation we'll have when we have a viable idea. Today I have this conversation. Our company is just not in a position where we would do these small homes. What are the square footages of the homes? 1,700 square feet and 2,500 square feet. They're going to take a massive amount of investment, and that just doesn't make sense on a private scale. I appreciate the comments about private homes and historic homes around the area that need some TLC or need a full gut renovation. This isn't a gut renovation. This is building a house inside of a box. She's going to rip off every shingle of the roof and put it back on. We're going to let her scour the barns for the extra shingles that someone else salvaged once upon a time, and we store in the barns. He's basically building a new home, historic, from inside out. So I couldn't be more excited about what it is. And I will tell you, the friends and the supporters that we have in New Longview, they're excited too. I promise you they're going to have opinions, and I think they've expressed that to you already as they've expressed it to me. There'll be a time for that later when she goes through her formal planning process. That's not what we're doing tonight. This is just to put her in my shoes, and then she will start her process of putting plans together, going through planning commission, and coming before the council for that approval.
Okay, so the barns that you mentioned, redevelopment, I think that's one that the community is really looking forward to. Is that a sentiment that you would confirm?
100%.
And you're saying that there's a domino effect here. We have to go through this order that we see in front of us. Is that correct?
Yes. So if I'm understanding correctly, the right side of the column on the bottom, the 400, the 1.4, that's it's pay as you go is probably the term you've heard. So every dollar that gets produced in New Longview from the maps Mr. Bushek showed in terms of pilots and eats go to fund those. The 400 has been taken care of. The 1.4 million is paid down to about 400,000. I'll have to check my math. So there's 400 left to pay there. Next on the list, the next 750 goes to paying the lake and the pergola. I think that'll take a couple of years. Then the next dollar goes to paying whatever Ms. Harrington decides to spend. If that's 1.2, and it all depends on what happens out there. Obviously, you approved something recently, maybe something else is on the horizon. So, Mayor Baird, what I'm trying to get to is for me to get to the point where there's at least dollars being produced that go to the barns, we're a lot of years away.
You need continued development.
We need continued development, and my concern, and we're getting off the topic here, is the TIF has a life, and we're 10 years into that life.
Right.
How much is going to be left when we get to the point where I can do a barns redevelopment?
Right.
And I'll
But
reiterate,
the sentiment in the community on the west side of town in this area is that they want to continue moving forward, and their support for saving all of these historic type of home properties.
Should expect to see me back here with some sort of ask to amend the TIF somehow, some way, because of the 10 years that have passed and we've not been able to do a Barnes development. But I won't do that until we have a solid use, a solid tenant, a solid buyer. We'll entertain anything.
What was your original use that you thought you would use these, the home for?
We didn't have one.
Okay.
We've put townhomes in there. I've looked at a brewery. We've talked to the Mid-Continent Library. We've talked to Cerner.
So this could still become one of those things someday, even if Miss Harrington turns it into a personal home right now, it could turn into something else 10, 20 years from now.
Absolutely.
That could be consumer facing.
And that's why the bed and breakfast is an important part of her plan, because it is partly consumer.
Okay.
And I think what she's shared with me is she's welcoming the neighborhood. I think she wants to do YouTube videos, as she shared with you. She wants to welcome the neighborhood. I would imagine half of her people will be New Longview residents that live that spend a night in the B&B.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember DeMoro?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bushak, the TIF, what is the length on the TIF? I meant that.
Each project area has to be approved within 10 years after the plan's approved. So that's all of these project areas. And then once the projects are activated, each project has its own clock that can last for up to 23 years. So, and I was just thinking about the timeline here as I was listening to the discussion. We're coming up on a point where either the remainder of these projects, which have not been activated, need to be activated, or we'll lose the ability to activate these, just as we did when we went from so a little more history here. This TIF plan had 10 different project areas. These were all unactivated within the 10-year window, which is why we had to do this TIF plan. And we're coming up on the point, it'll be, I don't know precisely when, middle, I think, of 2025, where we'll reach that 10-year clock, and the council will either have to activate these or not. And if not, then are we looking at a third TIF plan? Those are the two options, really. But the answer to your question is activate within 10 years, so the plan itself could last for conceivably up to 33 years.
And then the pilots and eats would be, they're activated, or they're reimbursable back to the city by the value of the property, not by the reimbursable expenditures of the TIF, correct?
So the way the pilots work is you start for example, the project that you just approved, we start with the base value of the property, whatever it is today, is assigned by the county today, and we'll be sending, I'm going to do this before Thanksgiving, we'll be sending the ordinance to the county. They will certify the base value of the property, and as the value of the property goes up over time based on the development that's occurring, that's the increment in the phrase pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. So that's the increment that's collected on the property tax piece that flows to the city to reimburse the developer. And then the EATS, that stands for economic activity taxes, that's the sales tax component. So for the projects up here, like the Taco Bell and the McDonald's and the CVS and so forth, 50% of all the sales taxes that are generated in that area also flow to the city to reimburse the developer. So it's 100% of the property tax increment and 50% of the sales tax increment that becomes available.
So then as a condition of the pilot, the city's not going to see any of that money until the TIF is exhausted, correct?
The city receives the pilot payments from the county on an annual basis. So the way it works for any individual parcel, just pick one like the Taco Bell parcel, the county sends out its tax bill like normal to that parcel. The tax bill, the amount on that tax bill is exactly the same as it would be if TIF was not in place. And then the math, we do the math from there. The base value, based on when it was activated, as compared to the value today, that's the increment. And those tax dollars associated with that incremental increase come to the city to reimburse the developer.
Okay, yeah. This is so much different than any other.
It is. It's very the way it functions is very different than the other types of incentives.
Yeah,
you've seen.
and you know, excuse all my questions, but I just had to totally understand that. So, given that, then we either have, you know, the property tax, the full property tax liability will not be benefiting the city or the taxing districts until the improvements are made, the money's exhausted and it's fully on the tax rolls then.
Correct.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've asked a bunch of questions. How about comments from council members? How you're going to vote, maybe, or do you want to just vote?
Sorry, I meant to.
Or Mayor Pro Tem Lopez?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I was just reserving my comments to right before we vote. Thank you for your interest in wanting to invest and live in Lee Summit, and that goes without saying. We appreciate that. The questions, obviously, as we already know, they're historical in nature, so I think a lot of us just kind of want to fill in the gaps a little bit. But, you know, my perspective and opinion is that, like Councilmember DeMauro kind of just said, this is unique. Though there are many probably historic type properties within our city limits in Lee Summit, single family, individual commercial buildings, as we know, downtown. I don't know that there's any like whole landmass with this complex of assemblage of properties anywhere in Lee Summit. And so that's what makes this even extremely unique, more unique. And so I commend the council in 2015 and 2013 for kind of like what is common amongst us as a city is we're kind of innovative and forward thinking. I think that was very forward thinking what they did, 2013. So I wouldn't want to derail that initial thought. Again, though there are other historic important areas of part of our city that are part of our city. I think this is we have a gem, we have a jewel opportunity that we need to continue to preserve that history that puts Lee Summit on the map. When people think of Longview, they think of Lee Summit, even though components of that are part of Kansas City. But just my opinion, I think we need to continue this promise that we made, some time ago, and continue this legacy. So I'd be supportive of this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Lovell.
Thanks, Mayor. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate your words there. It is a very unique thing. I certainly respect and understand every council member's just kind of trying to understand or wrap their head around this. I would give you some context to the historical nature of it, the history of R.A. Long and what was there. It's probably more near and dear to the hearts of the people that have invested in that community. I will say when this was put together, there was serious financial problems with the area, and much of what we had built our homes or staked this development on was the incorporation of these historical structures, just like the school was redone, just like one of the other houses was redone. And so this was in our opinion, we were losing a lot of control and kind of what originally the development was going to be at that time, as we've seen with new development that's gone in there, and then apartments and things like that. And this was the council kind of hearing us and saying, hey, this was supposed to be part of our development and the revitalization, and we had all these things in place, and now it's kind of all going away. And so, I am thankful that they were able to come up with something, although it's still proposing a lot of challenges. So to see someone come before us and have an opportunity to at least take this piece and understanding that this is there. This was, like they said, if the developer wasn't, moving it over to someone else to redevelop, they would just go forward and do it. And so, I'm obviously going to be in support of it. I know my neighbors in my district are in support of it. But I respect and understand every council member's kind of questions about how this works. And I would say too, though, we do incentivize a lot of projects that someone profits off of and sells later too. So it's not totally unique in that aspect. So, I'm appreciative of what we did to protect it, and that we have an opportunity here to at least kind of check one off the box that's been sitting there for a long time. And it looks beautiful, and, I hope it's, the pride and joy of that area and is preserved like we hoped it would be in 2015 when we were here. So I'll be in support of it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Hodges.
Thank you. I kind of wanted to echo what Councilmember Edson started out saying, that none of this was personal. Ultimately, I'm rooting for your success in that, and I'm excited to see what you do with it. I think where I was struggling was if it was more of a public component for the citizens, where, you know, it's a tourist attraction or just something, or a store where you're constantly in and out, we're enjoying it. I would have thought about it a little differently. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we're just wanting to make sure that we're being good stewards of incentives that are being handed out. But thanks to Mr. Bushek for explaining that, with the incentive being there regardless, that really put it into perspective for me. And so, you know, if someone's going to get it, it may as well be you. So I just want to say I wish you all the best, and I appreciate you wanting to invest and take a piece of history and make something of it. So thank you for what you're doing, and sorry for the questions, but it was great to hear it all explained a little better, so we can feel better about our decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. My sentiments exactly. As I said to Mr. Bushak, this is something that is just foreign to us. We do a lot of pilots, a lot of TIFs, and this is just out of the realm of completely understanding until you ask questions. And luckily, the commentary from Mr. Bushak and Mr. Mobley really helped. I also am rooting for your success, and I'm hopeful that when you do get substantially, your improvements are substantially finished, maybe you could have us out and show us, and we could all toast or something. But and on the other flip side, I'm only 39 years old, but when I was a kid, we used to drive through Longview. Well, I mean, the memory is vivid of what Longview Farms used to be in my mind. I mean, it really, on Sundays, we used to drive through. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Hodges. If someone's going to get the incentive, I'd much rather see you get it, who I feel like your vision is, if I were to develop something like this or redo something like this, I feel like your vision aligns with a lot of what I would want to do. So I'm rooting for your success, and I'll follow you on YouTube. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so unique situation. Hard to imagine what we would do if we had been back in 13 or 15 here, if we had been on the dais. But I also, you kind of painted that picture of the people in here with red shirts in support. It's always hard to not try to, listen to your citizens in the direction that they want. And so I agree with what everybody's been saying. So it sounds like we're going to vote on this, and we'll be watching and looking forward to the next steps. Without any further comment, anybody? Auctioneer. All right, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 8-0. Thank you for investing in Lee Summit. We are on public comments.
I have not received any public comments.
Then let's tackle the proposed ordinances forwarded from committee. Councilmember Shields, would you start us off?
Again, I didn't think I was assigned this one, but I'm happy to.
You weren't. Sorry.
That's fine. I'll read them all if you want. I move for second reading of Bill number 23-216, an ordinance approving amendment number 5 to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024, as adopted by ordinance number 9704, ordinance number 9705, ordinance number 9706, ordinance number 9707, and ordinance number 9708 by amending the authorized expenditures and amending the pay and classification plan for the city.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-216 by Councilmember Shields, the clutch hitter, or the pinch hitter, the relief pitcher, the auctioneer. Seconded by Councilmember Etzen. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 8-0. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I now move for adoption of Bill number 23-216, an ordinance approving amendment number 5 to the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024, as adopted by ordinance number 9704, ordinance number 9705, ordinance number 9706, ordinance number 9707, and ordinance number 9708 by amending the authorized expenditures and amending the payment classification plan for the city.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-216 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And it's adopted 8-0. Thank you. Councilmember Hodges, would you please read Bill number 23-217?
I move for second reading, Bill number 23-217, ordinance repealing ordinance number 9727 and approving the award of RFP 2023-050 for emergency dispatch software in the amount of $179,557 to Medical Priority Consultants, Inc., DBA Priority Dispatch Corp., and ratifying the city manager's execution of the same for all related and necessary documents.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-217 by Councilmember Hodges, seconded by Councilmember Pryor. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. That moves to second reading unanimously. Councilmember Hodges, would you please?
I move for adoption of Bill number 23-217, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 9727 and approving the award of RFP 2023-050 for emergency dispatch software in the amount of $179,557 to Medical Priority Consultants, Inc., DBA Priority Dispatch Corp., and ratifying the city manager's execution of the same for all related and necessary documents.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-217 by Councilmember Hodges, seconded by Councilmember DeMoro. Discussion? Please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It's adopted unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Pryor, would you please read Bill number 23-218?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to a second reading, Bill number 23-218, an ordinance approving the use of an agreement between the City of Lee Summit and Key Equipment and Supply Company and utilizing a Sourcewell Cooperative contract to purchase an Eagle Waterless Street Sweeper and authorizing the city manager to execute the same for the city.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-218 by Councilmember Pryor, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It's unanimous. Councilmember Pryor, would you please?
Sorry. I move for adoption, Bill number 23-218, an ordinance approving the use of an agreement between the City of Lee Summit and Key Equipment and Supply Company and utilizing a Sourcewell Cooperative contract to purchase an Eagle Waterless Street Sweeper and authorizing the city manager to execute the same for the city.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-218 by Councilmember Pryor, seconded by Councilmember Shields. Discussion? Yes, Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. So just out of curiosity, because I know, like with fire trucks and everything, it's taking so long to get those now. How far out is it from actually getting this, the city actually having it in their possession?
Here comes Mr. Park.
Right, and I would be very surprised if we get a delivered street sweeper by the end of this fiscal year. It'll probably carry over into the next year. Just like those heavy specialized equipment that you referred to at fire or police, we have specialized equipment. There's a really long lead time for its manufacture and delivery right now.
Okay, I was just curious do you guys get to design that?
No, this is a different vendor. This is off the product shelf, right?
Okay.
So, but it's not like we're going to be without a street sweeper. So this is one to replace the one we currently have. It's kind of reaching the end of its life cycle. So the other one, we'll just keep using it until we get another one delivered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? None, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It passes 8-0. Thank you. Councilmember Lovell, would you please read Bill number 23-219?
Thanks, Mayor. I move to advance the second reading, Bill number 23-219, an ordinance approving the award of RFP number 2024-028 for a yearly agreement with 4 possible one-year renewals for aviation fuel services for Lee Summit Municipal Airport to AVFUEL Corporation, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading, Bill number 23-219 by Councilmember Lovell, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It moves forward, second reading unanimously. Councilmember Lovell, would you please?
I move for adoption Bill number 23-219, an ordinance approving the award of RFP number 2024-028 for a yearly agreement with 4 possible one-year renewals for aviation fuel services for Lee Summit Municipal Airport to AVFUEL Corporation, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-219 by Councilmember Lovell, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It's adopted unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to proposed ordinances. First reading. Councilmember Shields, would you please read Bill number 23-220?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading, Bill number 23-220, an ordinance determining and declaring the necessity of acquiring for public use certain public easements and temporary construction easements for sanitary, sewer, water, stormwater, and other public improvements, and all work incidental and subsidiary thereto associated with the proposed North and South Summit Mill Improvements Project, authorizing city manager and his designees to negotiate for the purpose of acquiring the necessary interest in land, and authorizing city attorney and his designees to institute condemnation proceedings if such interest in land cannot be acquired by purchase through good faith negotiations.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading. Bill number 23-220 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Edson. Mr. Ison.
Thank you. Scott Ison, Chief Counsel of Infrastructure and Recreation for the city. This ordinance will allow the city to proceed forward with a condemnation action for certain easements necessary for the north and south improvements under this ordinance. It will also allow us to continue negotiations before we file that condemnation action. Sanitary, sewer, stormwater, and other utility easements are necessary for this project to proceed forward. The land is currently unable to be served by sanitary sewer in this area, and also without necessary stormwater improvements in this area. The city has been negotiating with the impacted landowners in this area in order to obtain the necessary easements. To date, the city has obtained either written agreements or the actual easements itself from 2 out of the 3 impacted landowners. One was an actual easement the city obtained. The second one was a written agreement for a friendly condemnation action since the owner was not able to grant the easements necessary for the city to obtain them. The third owner, the city has been negotiating with, but the city has been unable to obtain the easements from this third owner. The third owner's parcel is a large unimproved parcel of land. It is currently encumbered in the same area that the sanitary sewer improvement will go into, with an electrical easement that has high voltage overhead power lines in the area. It is also anticipated that the sewer line that will run through that impacted landowner's property would be able to potentially serve that property should development occur on that property. As with all condemnation actions, the city will continue to impacted landowner prior to filing this condemnation action, and hopefully the city can be successful. But if it is not successful, this will allow the city to proceed with condemnation on this property. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Ison? Okay, thank you. I will say to Ms. Fowler or Curry, thank you for giving this one to Councilmember Shields. Be sure to give it to her next week, or if this passes. Seeing no further discussion, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Takes that to second reading unanimously with 8-0 vote. Thank you all. Next, we go to proposed ordinances second reading. Councilmember Edson, would you please read Bill number 23-205 for adoption?
Yeah, mine's only like 15 words. This is awesome. I move for adoption Bill number 23-205, an ordinance approving a plan for a Chapter 100 project for the Clover Senior Independent Living Project.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-205 by Councilmember Edson, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 8-0. That bill is adopted. Next, Councilmember DeMora, would you please read Bill number 23-206?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move for adoption Bill number 23-206, an ordinance approving a rezoning from District AG to District CP2 and preliminary development plan for Cowboy Carwash on approximately 1.5 acres of land located at 3601 Southwest Hollywood Drive, all in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 33, Unified Development Ordinance of the Code of Ordinances for the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-206 by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Shields. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It's adopted unanimously. Thank you. And lastly, Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, would you please read Bill number 23-207 for adoption?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I move for adoption of Bill number 23-207, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a car wash facility in District CP2 on land located at 3601 Southwest Hollywood Drive for a period of 20 years, all in accordance with Article 6 of the Unified Development Ordinance for the city of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-207 by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And it's adopted unanimously. Thank you. Takes us to committee reports. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. Monday, which was just yesterday, we had a Legislative and Intergovernmental Relations Committee meeting. We did approve the lobbyist agreement to come to the full council for a look-see and a recommendation. And then we talked about the state legislative visit February 20th down to Jefferson City. Also, yesterday we had a Public Works meeting, and I can remember a lot about it, but it was kind of boring. So we spent a lot of money. How's that?
Yeah, you guys are good at that. All right. Other committee reports? Nope. Comments? Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've been thinking about this for a little while, and I wanted to see if it was something we could discuss as a council, and that is when we do any kind of incentive package, that I feel like we should have some stronger language about developers complying with all city ordinances, and that especially if after notice or repeated violations of city ordinances, that should possibly disqualify someone from receiving tax incentives. I don't want to be punitive or overly, I'm not looking for someone to accidentally slip up and then yank away something that we previously approved, but if someone is willfully not complying with our city ordinances, I don't think that they should be getting these incentives. They need to work with us and obey all of our requirements in order to continue to receive those. So I don't know if that's something, I know, I think this may sort of already be in our policy, but I was thinking that maybe we need a clearer policy statement. I don't know if Mr. Bushek wants to comment on that, and then possibly this is something that would go to CEDC. I would defer to Mayor Pro Tem on that, but I would really like to see us adopt some stronger language on that.
On that topic, it's very common, and I can't say this is true for every single document that I've worked on, but it's very common, and I think it's in all of them. We have a provision in our incentive contracts that says the developer must comply with all language that the city could enforce on that topic. However, declaring a party in breach under an incentive contract is a pretty severe consequence, and taking steps to, for example, completely terminate the incentive for non-compliance with various city ordinances, let's just say in that context, would be pretty rare from my experience, but it's already in the contract. And I understand the sentiment, exactly what you're saying. We don't like these things to happen, and maybe we could consider, in addition to the economic development incentive policy, that adds some more teeth to that concept, where if we have a developer that's knowingly, intentionally violating something after the city says don't do that, that we're signaling to the development community we're going to take action on that.
And that was sort of what I was thinking, is that I don't want this to come out of the blue that they're thinking, oh, this is just boilerplate language that we don't have to think about, although they should pay attention to all language in these contracts, obviously. And also, and this would maybe be something for us to discuss as council or as a committee, but maybe some more language like shall rather than may, like if this happens, that it shall be terminated, that I feel like this is not something that should be difficult to comply with, like that especially if you're coming to us and asking for millions of dollars in incentives, it should be you should understand that you need to work hard to follow the requirements and that they really are real requirements. So I don't know exactly what that would look like, but something to kind of, like you say, put some more teeth in it and let them know that we're serious. And then if it does happen in the future and something has to get terminated, that it shouldn't be as a shock to anybody.
Mr. Bushek, when we had the discussion about planning, with the Planning Commission, we were talking, you know, a lot of things were said that night, but one thing that you said is the moment that a developer puts incentives on the table, it opens a bunch of doors for the council with regard to what we can do and what kind of questions we can ask. And
Right.
and I think what Councilmember Shields is saying is, how do we not get in a situation where there's a $100 fee for a non-compliance issue? So that, because it's not matching with that type of, that's not helping us. I mean, we can implement the $100 fee later on and to try to force compliance, but we need something built into the contracts that's a little stronger than that. I don't know if the fees can be higher or whatever, if that violates ordinances, but is this a discussion that we can have at the CEDC level and then bring it forward to council?
Yes, I think that would be the appropriate path.
Is that good? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Pryor?
Thank you, Mayor. So I brought this up last night at Public Works, but the litter, I know it's not, I do not believe it's on our list of legislative priorities that we're taking to Jefferson City. I don't believe it's not on our list of priorities, but I kind of asked Mr. Park where we were on that effort, and I understand it's a big MoDOT issue. But when we go down to Jefferson City, I guess in February, is that something we can bring up to them and ask our state reps or our
It's
local
always good to have a
representatives?
specific ask.
Yeah,
If we can come up with a specific ask in the meantime.
even if it's not on our list of priorities? I mean, is that something we can just ask, like if, maybe to focus on our area a little more with all of the
Yep.
litter? Okay.
Absolutely, but let's start working on, that's only a couple months, 3 months away, so let's start working on what our ask is.
Okay.
I mean, it's one thing to walk in and ask for support. Yeah, they support not littering, but what do we really want them to do? So Mr. Park, put your thinking cap on what we can ask our legislative representatives to champion for us.
How are other states doing it? I know when I drive through other states, I mean, even there's a distinct difference when you're driving down 435 and you leave Missouri and you go into Kansas. There's a distinct difference in what our highways look like with all the litter versus what their highways look like. But even driving through Mississippi and Tennessee, like, how are they doing it and we can't manage to do it here? I guess I don't understand, but.
Sometimes, I'll let Mr. Park answer, but I can tell you that Kansas has prioritized their roads and infrastructure for many, many, many decades. I think to a greater degree than Missouri has, and some of it has to do with some of the laws, does it not?
But not necessarily the laws. I think it just boils down to having a commitment of funds. So MoDOT has been asking for additional funds to prop up or contract, whether it be their resources and their staffing and their equipment, or to contract the same for things like litter cleanup. They asked this last budget cycle. It was not supported. So I do think, our legislative priorities have some very broad umbrellas, right, of supporting those kind of state funding initiatives. But it would be helpful to have very specific actions like that, where say, if MoDOT's asking for funds, support the request for funds because those funds directly address highway trash and litter. That's where I think, the action can happen, and where in other states, they've made it a priority to set aside money for that cleanup activity to occur. Whereas in MoDOT, I mean, that's the information I'm receiving from our partners over at the state, is that they can't get the financing to contract more. They contracted a little bit with Kansas City and some of their primary routes. They told us, the next few routes on the list based on their volume is like 470, 50 highway. They went to the state and they didn't get the money. So they can't expand those services, those contracted services anymore to help our community. So that's where I would say, yeah, a pointed request, not just support various state agencies and their budget requests, but support particular requests that the state's making.
Okay, that's good information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Lovell.
Thank you, Mayor. Last night, I think it was last night, Public Works? Yes, Public Works. We had a item come up there was for some design services on one of the proposed bond initiatives from the election that we had back in, was that April of last year? Yeah. So it just prompted some questions for me, and having not gone through this before, I know that, kind of how it was presented to the city was, here is a list of items of projects that we've kind of approved to issue these bonds. And I guess from my perspective, I was just wondering how we go about deciding which ones we want to do or not do. How do we go about, because we're spending money now designing those without knowing whether we are going, whether we've approved, because I believe they come back as a line item to us. So I guess my question is just trying to better understand how we will make those decisions as a body. And then also understanding in the financial kind of world that we're in right now, high interest rate environment, do we get third-party analysis to come in and say hey, this is a smart move to go issue these bonds right now, so that number one, we're kind of getting that out in public, we're getting a full understanding of what we're embarking on, and then just kind of better understanding that process, I guess, is as someone that hasn't been through that before.
Mr. Dunning?
So at the meeting next week, we'll be providing an overview of all of the no tax increase bond issue initiatives and where we're at with certain projects. So we'll be having that discussion at the next council meeting. And part of that is...
I did not mention this to you before the meeting. You just read my mind. That's great.
Yeah. Knowing that we have some of these coming through, right? And we owe that to all of you and to the public to say, here's where we're at with these projects. But you're spot on with the financing, right? And that is a process we go through, knowing when we retire that debt, that we need to issue more debt, and being very mindful of interest rates and everything else that goes
And how
along with
much
that.
and
Exactly.
what, yeah, okay, great. Well, that's awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So I have a report with regard to the EDC. We've had a couple meetings recently, and the meeting I had today at 3 o'clock, the EDC board wants to move forward with an ad hoc committee of its board members. It wants to add a past member, past chair to the group, and start working on the bylaws. Start working on a strategic plan alongside a best practices. They want to eventually get to the point where they can work with us on a PSA, but to do that, they want to, in their words, prove themselves to the council by working on the bylaws, making either changes, modifications, or starting over with the bylaws. They want to address the best practices from our study, but also do some of their own research with a consultant. So they are dedicating this ad hoc committee or subcommittee. You have to call it ad hoc because it's not members of the board, to meeting basically weekly, if not more, given the fact that there's going to be board meetings nearly weekly, and then also the ad hoc committee will meet in a greater depth to come back to the board and have discussions. that's the path that they would like to go. They're not making a request for funding at this point. That wouldn't happen. They would not make a request for funding until after we could get through bylaws, best practices, and lining up a strat plan so that they could then put together some type PSA, public service agreement, that they could put in front of us. So they do know the time is of the essence, but they also can see that this is going to take many months to put together. You could say a couple months, but when you think about all of it, it's going to take many months. I will tell you that that this is the motion that got approved today. The action was that the ad hoc committee consist of a couple of people to lead it, Michael Van Buskirk and Bill Brown. They would like to add past chair Carl Chinnery, board member Tom Jackson, board member John McDonald, board member Bobby Ohm Shipman, board member Laurel Hogue, board members Mayor Bill Baird and city manager Mark Dunning. They would like to also add 1 or 2 council members, and they would like to bring Jennifer Lyons into these meetings. She works with KCADC. She's kind of our area rep. And they would like to, they're going to contact a couple of consultants to put before the board to decide which one they would like to have. I think, I wouldn't say moderate, I would say organize to help keeping it going forward, because we have an interim director that is not going to be able to like put these bylaws together for us that they want to use. When it comes to the bylaws, to try to, there are changes that need to be made to the bylaws. There are modifications that need to be made to empower the board of the EDC. I don't know that it needs to be scrapped, but whatever the changes are that we can agree to, they need to be followed. That's the most important thing. Follow the bylaws. And yes, there need to be changes. Everybody on the board knows that. And but I don't know that that part of the task is as daunting as they think it is, simply because there's a framework already in place. So with that, I'm going to commit to go to all these meetings, continue to go to all these meetings, and work in good faith. They're working on getting on everybody's schedules during a very busy time, which would be the holidays. So it's going to be a wild ride the next couple of months. But there are a lot of people that are passionate and emboldened to move this forward. That I'll take questions. Councilmember Edson.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 questions. So you submitted a proposal to us and that they heard and that we discussed. So are they just ignoring that?
No, I think that most of them say that they understand the need to change the composition of the board, diversify that composition of the board, add some ex officio members that aren't voting members, but would add to the quality of the meetings. Yeah, discussion. And then they are obviously for redoing the bylaws and trying to follow best practices. They just opposed reconstituting the board.
So are we're still not committed to anything at this point?
No, and there's no
Okay.
ask on the table from them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro.
I had a similar question. That was about the reconstitution of the board. They have not ignored that request, the reconstitution.
There just was a lot of discussion on it, and they want to continue as they currently are. The consensus was to move forward with the current board members.
So, okay, well, all right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Shields?
I appreciate the update. I hope that they work as expeditiously as possible on this. Obviously, I can't speak for my fellow council members, but I would not support any new PSA or any new funding until this work is done, until they actually have new bylaws in place and have decided what the organization will look like going forward. So I know there had been some discussion a while back about interim funding, and that's not something I would support. So I really hope that they work to get this done very quickly, because it doesn't seem like this can continue much longer in the way it is right now. Just for their perspective, if they're not getting funded.
From Mr. Dunning, you have to let me know if I'm saying this accurately, but to me, they took that interim funding off the table to be able to continue forward to work on the bylaws.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, it's like I'm trying to put into a council comments a whole lot of discussion, as in hours and hours. So, trying to get the summary. Summary is what I just gave you. I mean, there's a lot of details, but I don't know how relevant they are. And should I add anything else? I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you provided a pretty good summary.
All right, so there's going to be a bunch of work done and a bunch of meetings and a bunch of discussion, and we'll see how expeditious they can move forward with it. So, and they still have more decisions to make. We just got to have meetings just to decide who the consultant is and things of that nature. So they're talking about to do things expeditiously using Zoom, because that is the way we can, if we need to, use a Zoom meeting for quick meetings and getting together, because these are, you saw them, they were in front of us, they're busy people. I do want to remind you all that every time I'm told that they're busy, I also am busy. I have to make money selling real estate, and then I'm also the mayor. So I'm in the same boat. I really am. But I'm willing to commit and lead by example by showing up. So, all right. Well, I think we are at the end of the regular session. But what about staff roundtable?
Thank you, Mayor. One topic. So for a couple weeks, we've been pushing out information about Lee Summit Aware. That's a free community alert system that can send messages to your phone, landline, or mobile, to text and to email. And so it's out there for residents and stakeholders to plug into that system to receive different types of communication and notifications. It's everything from emergency type alerts to other things more related to city services is a category, general city communications, weather, things of that nature. So that's been out there for a couple weeks. We've already had, we're close to 700 subscribers. So you can pick and choose what you'd like, the information you'd like to receive through this system. So I just wanted to create that awareness. It's out there, and encourage you to, as you interact with your constituents, to make people aware of that system that's out there.
Thank you. All right. Who's going to read us into closed session? Councilmember DeMoro, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 610021 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri pertaining to legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body or any confidential or privileged communication between a public governmental body or its representatives and its attorneys, and pursuant to Section 610021 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri pertaining to the leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate by a public governmental body where public knowledge of the transaction might adversely affect the legal consideration. Therefore, I move for closed session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to go into closed session by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Shields. Discussion? Look at them all. They're scampering out of here because it's only like 7:40. Seeing no discussion, Ms. Fowler or Curry, would you please roll call it?
Councilmember DeMauro,
Aye.
Councilmember Shields,
Aye.
Councilmember Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Hodges,
Aye.
Councilmember Felker,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lopez,
Aye.
Mayor Baird.
Aye. See you all Friday night.